first Bean Goes Zoom video. First thing I wanted to talk about was what kind of inspired me to make this channel, which is the fact that I see so many other YouTubers, Hoovie's Garage, Get the Car Wizard, Legit Street Cars, Watch JR Go, all those guys, and I always sit around and just watch their stuff, and I'm like, why don't I do the same thing, but with even lower production value and less scare put in the videos? So here we go. But I love to wrench on cars. It's something I started when I was in high school, when I got my first car. I bought the family 2003 ES300 off of my dad for like $1,500, 245,000 miles. It was a disaster. He didn't do anything to it other than drive it. So it needed a lot of work, and I knew if I wanted to have a car that was roadworthy so I could go do stuff, because I grew up in Northeast Ohio where you needed a car to go do anything. I needed to teach myself how to do it, because I sure the hell didn't have the money to fix up the car. So that's where it all kind of started, and that's kind of where my love for Lexus anyway came from. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love other cars. Obviously Toyota, obviously exotics, who doesn't? But this car, the RC F, was the only thing in my price range that made sense, was original and cool and reliable. So it checked all the boxes. And when it came out, I was still in high school, and I watched the Jeremy Clarkson review on Top Gear, and he just absolutely ragged on this thing. And at that point, I had no interest in the car ever again, because I took what he was saying as the gospel, and I said, well, I guess the RC F is a terrible car, and I completely lost interest in ever getting one. And then come 2018, I'm currently an Amtrak engineer, and I was in school to learn how to be an engineer, and I realized that the money I was going to make would allow for something like this car. And that's kind of when I had my aha moment of, wow, I think I might actually get this car. Screw what Jeremy Clarkson said. And especially after I won a test drove one, the first one I test drove, white with a red interior. It was actually pretty much a base model, but I was sold. I was like, I needed this car, especially after driving the ES300 for 100,000 miles of just sheer boredom. But don't get me wrong, I love the car. I actually just sold it to a buddy, but I knew I needed something with some horsepower. So that brings us here. Did all the planning, did what I needed to do, saved up the money, and figured out, like I said, I test drove that white one with the red interior, fell in love with it, fell in love with that color combination, and realized that as nice as it is, and I would still totally take one today, don't get me wrong, but I realized I wanted a special color on the outside. And I also realized that when I was knee-high to a duck's ass learning how to, I don't know, do algebra in 6th grade or whatever, and the ISF was coming out, I saw a poster with a blue ISF, and that's kind of what really was like, wow, I want an F car one day. And Savage Geese's YouTube video, who also, thank you, you inspired me to start this channel, Savage Geese, as well as Legit Street Cars. Literally just watched Legit Street Cars video about how he quit his day job to do YouTube videos about cars, so shout out to you as well. But his video, he reviewed one spec'd almost exactly like this one, but mine doesn't have the torque vectoring differential, which I didn't get on purpose, because I wanted the limited slip rear end, and also if that torsion goes out, obviously you could get a junkyard one, but if the torque vectoring diff goes out on this car, it's like 12 grand from Lexus, and that would just turn this car into a paperweight, unless you could find a scrapyard one, which at this point in time you can. But even back when I was first buying this, parts were somewhat limited, so I didn't want to run the risk of that. So here we are in my attainable dream car. I'll talk about some bads real quick, and then we'll talk about the goods and just general talk about it. So the bads are very limited. First thing to look for is this carbon fiber trim delaminating. It's really not a huge deal. You can just see mine starting to do it right there, and more so on the passenger side there. Now this can be changed out at Lexus. If you want to buy the same thing again and have it do it again, go ahead. Or you could buy it from a third party who makes the same exact piece, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is sand it off and just take it to a body shop and have the body shop respray it with clear coat, because that's much more affordable. What else? The Mark Levinson sounds awesome. Can't really handle super low end bass. You'll hear the subwoofer just like absolutely struggling to keep up. But as long as you're not like slamming some, I don't know, Gorilla Zoe or whatever tickles your fancy. I love Gorilla Zoe. That's not shaded Gorilla Zoe. As long as you're not slamming anything too hard in this, it can handle it. But the amplifier for this thing is now to go out. So I've had it actually turn off on me a few times, and it's pretty much determined to be a heat problem because the thing's tucked away underneath the trunk liner back there and it doesn't get enough air. So you could get it rebuilt at, I'll think of the place, I'll put it in the description. Before you go out and buy another one from Lexus, just have it rebuilt at a shop. I think they could do it for literally half the price, 400, 500 bucks, and you'll have an amplifier again versus spending thousands. Another thing is the high pressure fuel pumps under the hood up here. Now, they chirp when they go bad. People, the first one I drove, the dealership was telling me, oh, it's a belt squeak, it's a belt squeak. I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't really sound like a belt squeak, but it does a really high pitched chirping noise, and especially at idle. So there was a recall campaign, they replaced it, and those actually started chirping on me again. So this is my third set of high pressure fuel pumps in this car. It is what it is, but they replaced it under warranty of the 1-year warranty of the replacement part. So we're coming up on the 1-year mark, which will be December. I don't drive this car in the winter, and they haven't started doing it again. Apparently it's from the ethanol and American gas. That's just an American thing to have. We have so much corn we put in our fuel, of course, and so they're not really designed to handle that. Again, it is what it is, so what are you gonna do? Now when those do start going out and they're out of warranty, they're 800 bucks or $1,000 a piece, and there's 2 of them, so that's not gonna be fun. I know it's probably inevitable. That's truly the only weakness on this entire engine, which is the good news. At least you're not dealing with timing chains like an Audi or God knows what else. I take that back. There's also the valley plate issue. This isn't a huge deal. It hasn't happened to many RCFs or GSFs yet, but it has to do with the gasket that they made around the intake for the, I don't know, I'm struggling with the words, but where the coolant sits in between the V of the 8. That's just like a Permatex type gasket. I'm not using the right word, but whatever gasket Toyota used, which is liquid gasket, not a physical gasket, fails at some point. Not guaranteed, but probably if you have the car long enough. Not a super expensive job. I want to say it's $1,400 to $1,600 from the dealership. Something you could do in your garage if you're mechanically inclined. I think that all the materials needed will be a couple $100 and a day of your time. But I haven't had that problem, knock on wood. A lot of people haven't had that problem yet, so it's nothing to be super wound up about. Something to look for though, and you'll see it dripping down on the transmission. So if you're buying this, do an inspection, put up on a lift or whatever, and crawl underneath there and see if you see any of the pink coolant dried up on there. I recommend doing all the fluids because they say they're lifetime, but that's a lie. Do the differential like every 10,000 miles, because my magnet was pretty caked up with metal debris. Not big pieces, but just little magnetic particles were really on the magnet in there. So there's absolutely no reason to not do that. It's super easy. $40 in fluid. I did red line, and the gasket's like $1 from Lexus. So do that every 10,000. Now, a lot of people are gonna scream at me for this, but I do get the transmission serviced at a good transmission shop every 20,000 miles, where they drop the pan, change the filter, clean the magnets off, and then stick a machine up on the intake where the filter goes, turn on the car, and let the car's pump circulate fresh fluid through it. I haven't had any problems because of this. I'm at 47,000, so I've had it done twice now. But the AA80E, this transmission in here, isn't a rocket ship by any means, and it kind of feels old, especially if you've driven like a BMW with a ZF transmission or something like that. But it handles the car fine. When you're in manual mode at low speeds, it feels awful, so don't even think about doing that, because anything above first gear, the torque converter locks up. So it's like a manual car at that point, and it's very lurchy. There's no point in doing it. Now, some good news. The eco mode in this car, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what the gas mileage is like, but when you have this thing on eco mode on the highway, and especially, I don't know, on a good day, going downhill, whatever. But check this out. On my vacation last year, I got 30.8 mpg all day long. I made it from Cleveland to Delaware on one tank of gas with this thing, which is incredible considering this is a V8 sports car. So you don't have to worry about that. That's good news. Now when you drive like your foot is made out of lead, you get awful mileage, but that's a given. The dynamics of the car are really awesome. So when you're in eco mode and you're just rolling down the highway and you just want to listen to music on the Mark 11, so whatever, feels like a luxury car, feels like a Lexus. It's a little stiff on the suspension still, but it's nothing violent. Then when you want to open it up, sport mode, this is just sport, and there's sport plus. Sport mode has a little more bite to it. It changes the shift points ever so slightly, and the throttle response. It's more so throttle response. And then with the Sport Plus, it really sharpens the shift points, so it's going to hold lower gears for longer, and it's going to be very lurchy as it shifts, because they're trying to give you the track feel or whatever they're going for. The seats hug you. Now, if you're a bigger person, I don't know how comfortable they are. I'm 6'2" and 190 pounds, so they absolutely hold me, and I'm never sliding around. I've done, like I was saying, I did 8-9 hour road trip. Towards the end of the day, I do have a little bit of a bony ass, so it does get a little uncomfortable after a really long drive, but nothing incredibly bad. Nothing that you can't handle. You could drive this car. I would drive this car across the country today if I had the time. Some quirks are the fact that the infotainment system is like 2007. There's no other way to put it. It looks like, I don't know, a family member just bought a nice car in 2007 and you're envious of it, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of nice things I could say about it. It does what it needs to do, and the good news is you really don't have to touch it that much. Everything's mostly physical controls. You got the touch sensitive bar down here for the temperature. That's it. You don't have to go into the screen for anything. You got seat warmer buttons, seat cooler buttons right here. Seat coolers aren't anything fantastic, and it's been determined because the blower for the seats is so small, and I'm using the wrong words, but the transformer or resistor, whatever the hell it is in the seat, is just big enough that at some point it just feels like it's a seat heater instead of a seat cooler, and it's kind of stupid. So for maybe 15 minutes it's fine, but they're not great. But that's not why you're buying this car, to have a cold ass. You're buying this car to have fun. So that's all I could really think of. I didn't get a sunroof because I wanted the headroom. As you can see, you get this concave to the ceiling, which is important for me being tall. Didn't get the TVD, like I said. Got it with the radar cruise. This is an independent option, so you'll see this button's blanked out on some cars. I wanted it because I do long drives every now and then, and I do like to zone out and just pick the speed and pick a distance, and all you got to do is steer at that point. On later models, I believe 16 or 17 was the first year, they had adaptive high beams, which the button would be down here. The only package this car doesn't have is the torque vectoring differential and the all-weather package, so you would have a button for washer sprayers right here if you had the all-weather package, which is stupid to me. It's useless to me. I don't drive the car in the winter. I keep the car perfectly clean. I don't want washer sprayer fluid running up my hood when it's perfectly detailed. You also lose the heated steering wheel option, which would have been nice because I do drive the car when it's cool, but that was a whole lot of stuff on a car that I'm not buying new, and I wasn't about to spec out independently because I found this thing on Carvana for $44,500 2 years ago, and it's held its value, and I've driven it 30,000 miles. I think I could trade it in for $45,000, so it was almost exactly what I wanted. We could take a walk around outside. I'll show you. Got the Brembos back here, 20-spoke wheels, little bird poop. Now, what's cool, at night, there's a little LED right here, so it lights up the ground around where you're walking in the car. And there's also a strip right here that lights up, which is a really nice feature. Always makes me laugh. So that's about it. That's my walk around video. Gorgeous car, very unique, very underloved in my opinion. Yeah, is it as fast as an M3? No. Can it keep up pretty closely? Sure, if it's not tuned. But if you're not a numbers guy and you're looking for originality, craftsmanship, and having a car that people rubberneck at, a lot of people do. They love this thing. I get compliments all the time. It's seriously something to look into. And insurance isn't bad as well. Everything I'm rambling about, I'm just trying to cover all the bases of just a normal person buying this car, because I feel like so many YouTubes cater to, I don't know, the top % of people who are only going to lease the car for a minute and going to take it to the track once and smoke everybody and whatever. But just as a regular dude who uses this car every day, it's done great. I've moved with this thing. The trunk has plenty of space to jam everything in, and it's a reasonable car. So a reasonable car for what it is, I should say. It's not a reasonable car, but anyways, I hope you guys liked my first video. I know it's extremely amateur. I hope the production value made you laugh, and me rambling as well. But I'll be posting more videos of it and my 2001 4Runner I'm about to get. It's in like super good condition from Florida, so I'm about to polish it up and do some stupid modifications and spend a lot of money I don't need to spend on it. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed.